All right, Kingkillers, we got a bonus episode for you. We are covering the Doors of Stone prologue and question and answer session that Rothfuss delivered the other day. If you're not aware, Rothfuss released the prologue for the Doors of Stone. He did a reading on Twitch. It's the first Doors of Stone material or Kingkiller Chronicle material we've gotten in over 10 years. So we were pretty jacked up, wanted to get on here and do an episode on it. Some nice little tidbits on things to speculate on. And we dive into his question and answer session for book 3 as well. So a lot of good stuff here. I'll put links in the show notes to the Twitch reading of it, as well as links to my Twitter feed where I have a thread that has a lot of the different links all put together in one spot. So check out the show notes if you want more information on that and you want to see Rothfuss actually read the prologue and do the question and answer session. Outside that, enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Kingkiller podcast. I'm Dan, and I'm sure we got a lot of new people listening here, so introduce my co-host. We got the tallest 4'9", 95-pound podcaster in the game, Tim, aka Tiny Tim, aka Tedious Tim. What's going on?
Yeah, that's one hell of an introduction. I am here. I don't know about tedious.
In a complimentary way, though. Like tedious, like as a compliment somehow.
Yeah, I was gonna say somehow. I don't know how you weave that into a compliment. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. I haven't heard a positive connotation of tedious yet.
Yeah, well,
until now, I guess.
I just gave you one. I just gave you a perfect example of one. So we're doing a bonus episode this week. So there is a bit of news this week for Kingkiller fans.
Big news.
We got the prologue for the Doors of Stone, the first new page of the Kingkiller Chronicles in over 10 years.
Pretty good.
You sound very enthused.
Well, there's a lot more than just that. I mean, there is that, and then there's a lot more that's going to be coming. But yeah, to actually get a piece of the actual prose is pretty tremendous.
Yeah, so if you're not online and you haven't been paying attention and you just listen to the podcast,
you're not online.
Yeah, if you don't have internet access,
if you don't have an email address,
yeah.
If you don't know what http://
you know what, there is surely going to be someone who's going to listen to this podcast that has no idea what we're talking about. So I'll fill you in. So Rothfuss, he runs a charity every year, World Builders, and they raise money for to buy kids, families, goats and chickens and stuff. And
while you're explaining, Rothfuss is the author of the book.
Yeah. He's
so, if you're going to explain,
Patrick Rothfuss. He was born 6 feet tall, coming out of his mom.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was rough birth. But his mom's was 15 feet tall.
Is he that tall, or has he shrunk?
He's shrunk.
6 foot tall.
He got
Oh, yeah. Well, really?
Yeah, they have their family's like a real Benjamin Button, but with height.
No wonder he's into charity. Get it? I got it.
Okay, so he does this charity every year, raises money for families in need over in Africa and a lot of these third world countries, and helps them get self-sustaining things. But beyond the charity, they raised a bunch of money, and some of the stretch goals were that if they hit a certain amount, he would read the prologue for Doors of Stone. And there's going to be some other things, like he also did a book 3 question and answer. And we're going to get a complete chapter from Doors of Stone, a solo chapter that is also, it's going to be read by professional narrators. That will be out sometime by the end of February. So sometime in the next couple of months, they'll put out a solo chapter from Doors of Stone. But we already got the prologue and we got the question and answer, and he's going to do another book 3 question and answer at some point soon too. Oh, and one other thing he's going to do that sounds pretty dope is he's going to do a stream where he shows his computer screen and we get to watch him type a short story set in Timarant in the Kingkiller Chronicle world.
Yes. And at some point, as he was talking about that, he was talking about also this other story that he's had in mind for years. And he's like, I got the first line of the story. He gave the premise of a girl in Modeg that makes gods, which sounds fucking awesome. And he goes, well, it all comes from the first line of the story. You want to hear the first line of the story? And then he's like, oh, hold on. And then he started doing something else, and it never came up again. Like it went on some other tangent, and he never went back to it.
Yeah,
he's a master of putting little things out there, like just little teasing points.
Yeah, that'll be cool to see. I want to see like his process, see like him, the writing and revision process that he goes through. I think it'd be pretty cool to watch. And I think it might, because of the way they structure the goals, I think he might do it twice. There might be 2 times where he streams the writing process for a short story. But we got a lot of cool stuff. And so, but this episode, we're going to focus in on the question and answers for book 3, as well as the prologue. There's a lot of meaty stuff in these. So kind of just jump into the question and answer. I also pulled up the question and answer he did about 5 years ago. So we'll go through those as well, since we're doing this thing. And so like the first thing that he brought up in this question and answer, they asked him, you rated book 3 as 3.5 stars in Goodreads 3 years ago. How would you rate it today? And he said, it's better. Thing is, it's not a straight line. It's not like it's not like things get progressively better. He compared it to like a long-term relationship where, you have your ups and downs. And so like during his revision process, sometimes, he's got it at a good point, but then he sees a part of the story that he wants to redo. So he pulls that out and completely dismantles the story and then reworks that whole thing. And then he has to rework other things. So at any given time, it could be, better or worse given on what he's doing as far as his revision process. So it's not a straight line. It's not like he's going chapter 1 edited, chapter 1 done, and then goes on to chapter 2. It's not a straight line. He's going through, he's written out a story, and then he's adding things, taking things out, changing things, and he's, building a machine that's going to work at the end.
Quite clear from the first 2 books, that he weaves things throughout. There's all these suggestive layering of, sub-stories, and then anything that happens, there's little Easter eggs that lead up to that point. So if you're going to rework something, you got to go back and make it all work together. He's clearly an artist in that sense. So it's not like you just take one thing out, put something else in, and just have it fit.
Hey, I mean, the job he's got to do is tremendously difficult because it's such an intricate web. Like whenever you add any parts in to part 3, if you add in the person says the wrong thing, a character does the wrong thing, there's any kind of little hole in it, it completely wrecks everything you've built in the first 2 books, because it's such a tight puzzle that you don't have room for error, because making an error can wreck the first 2 books. So it's a very intricate web.
Well, what's really interesting about that, because part of one would think, well, he's already written the first 2 books, so this world's already created. He's got all these characters, just keep going. But like you just said, there's parameters that have been set up at this point. So you're broadening the horizons, but you're also within some parameters of the logical conclusions of things that have been already progressing. or the
Yeah.
logical consistencies, better than conclusions would be a better word. So
I mean,
that's why it's so delicate and intricate.
Yeah, everything has
process.
to fit with book 1 and 2. And I mean, and it's one of those stories where there's things in book 1 that are clues for things that are going to happen in book 2, and there's probably clues in book 1 that are for book 3
There's
that you won't
plenty
know.
in
And
3.
so, like,
Yeah.
he's got all these clues, and he's got to tie all of them together, and they have to tie together in a way that's not only satisfying to read, but it's got to be logically consistent. It's got to make sense. It's got to fit the way the story has been told. So it has to be consistent and fit well together. He obviously did that between books 1 and 2. Doing it for book 3, it becomes progressively harder because you're talking about, 1,700 pages or so that he has, already written for this trilogy. And so he's got another 1,000 pages that he's adding to it, and all of those pages have to be congruent with the first 1,700.
Well, what's really interesting about some of and we'll get into it, but some of the responses to the questions where he would be like, well, that might be revealed after Doors of Stone. So it's bigger than just the third book.
Yeah.
Overall, the way he's envisioning the world in itself and all of these pieces, there's preamble to different parts of the story that what he's suggesting is that's not even going to be necessarily revealed in Doors of Stone. It might be a different story. Or it might be the story continuing beyond, because there was a big hint at one point where I guess he suggested that Kvothe's story does not end in book 3.
That's massive. I mean, we'll go into that, but some of the other aspects of it, I think, that make it difficult is also that it's one of the really tough parts is it's first person, so you're in Kvothe's head. You don't get the benefit of being in Will's head or Sim's head or Denna's head or Loden's head or Ari. We get Ari's short story, but in these books, we're not in their head. Yeah, or if you're in someone's head, you're in it for a very short amount of time, like Chronicler or Bast. But without being in their head, it's very hard to understand the character. You're relying completely on Kvothe, but the problem with that is, for Rothfuss to be consistent, Kvothe is very much focused on his own things. He's got blinders on. He's not very analytical as far as the motivations of his friends and what they're going through and what's going on, in their lives. He's not overly focused in on these things. He's very concerned about what his mission in life is, on getting revenge for the Chandri, on learning magic and all that. He's very much focused on his shit. And so with a character like that, you're not getting him analyzing Denna and explaining, because Rothfuss could write it in a way where Kvothe is very analytical about Denna and her motivations, and he's thinking these things, he's working them out, and he's trying to figure that out. But that's not what happens. He doesn't try to figure what Denna's motivations are at all. So we're not getting that, and we have to figure
Sorry, I was going to say we get his reactions of, this is how Simon acts, how does this affect me? Same thing with everybody. It's all like complimentary towards like Sim or I'm drawing a blank on Will. And everybody, it's like complimentary in the sense of how it affects him, or it's negative in the way that it affects him. It's honest, seemingly, in the way that it affects him. Yeah, right. But it's all through that lens, like you're saying. He's not going analytical to the sense that every now and then he does ask questions about Simon's background, right? Things like that, where it's like.
But even then, like, usually it's not even him just asking questions about his background. It's like he puts his foot in his mouth, and Will like stops him, like, hey, don't ask him about that, and then has to explain it to him later why he shouldn't have fucking, why not to bring that, because he's not asking like, so what is your goal in life? What are you trying to accomplish, Simon or Will? He's not trying to figure out what other people, their aspirations are, or what their motivations are, why they do exactly what they're doing. He's not trying to figure these things out. He's just, having conversations with his friends, but he's not trying to, figure out why they do what they do. So when you're writing a first person narrative like that, it's very hard to understand, the side characters, because the only way you can explain them is through dialogue. and through like quirks of
Their own
personality.
actions. Yeah.
And so, but he does that masterfully because we do understand Sim and Will and Elodin and Ari. Without Kvothe explaining it to us, we can figure it out through the dialogue and through their personalities, their mannerisms, these kind of things. We can figure it out through the context of the book without Kvothe spelling it out for us, which is not easy to do.
It's really funny to see it through Kvothe's own prejudices, because you see his prejudice, but then you see beyond it because you see it's a prejudice, you know? Like he's a poor kid, so he's looking at these like rich kids in this way. That's why he doesn't see that Simon's life would be difficult, because he's not picturing it in the way that Simon has to live his life, with his father basically not respecting what he does, right? So he's like the black sheep. He doesn't see it. We see it, even though we're seeing that Kvothe doesn't see it. Yeah, that's great. That's what I was saying. He's a master. That's great writing. That's still being revealed to us. And it's actually even being punctuated to a greater degree because we're seeing through Kvothe's prejudice. The narrator's own prejudice, we're seeing through it. So it even like accentuates it even greater.
It's the same thing with like Elodin, like where we see Elodin is trying to teach Kvothe in a very subtle way. And Kvothe just does not see it at all. So the only way you can figure this stuff out is through reading the book. Sometimes you got to read them multiple times and pick it up, you know, the second time through. But you figure these things out on your own. It's not Kvothe telling you what's going on, because a lot of the times he's oblivious to what's going on. Or Denna being able to, where Kvothe doesn't realize Denna's into it, we are able to sense that. Or we can see that Denna obviously has some agenda. There's clearly something driving her. Kvothe never once thinks about what is driving her.
Well, one of the better examples we just got was he's on the road with the bandits and he sees Hespa and Daydan and sees that they're into each other. Daydan doesn't see it, and we're sitting there laughing because Kvothe doesn't see that Denna's into him.
Yeah,
you know, as much as she is. It's a fucking great example when we're reading it and getting to see that, because Kvothe's just like, man, how blind is he? It's like, yeah, dude, how blind can guys be?
Yeah.
Like, look at you, bro. Yeah, it's fantastic.
So I mean that aspect makes it difficult, and then writing a first person narrative, the dialogue is extremely important, and then he increases the difficulty by writing so much of the dialogue in like a poetic verse. And then not only, because think of how bad so much poetry is. Like half the time you read poetry, it's like, oh, this is fucking terrible. And so like he throws it in his book, and he does it so subtly that half the people read it, they don't even realize that how much of the book is in poetic verse. It's so much of the dialogue.
A lot of it is a lot of it is just it sounds very lyrical and like well thought out, put together, you know. And the way that it hits the ear, the way that it hits if you read it, you can see it more clearly. But yeah, it's very artful the way you can tell he really loves words, and the way that he puts it all together, especially like the prologue. That's a tremendous example, you know, of that sort of poetic side of things. But I mean, I would say not necessarily all poetry is bad. The typical poetry you're just going to come across is typically going to be awful. If you're hearing it on television, if you're seeing it on like a movie or a show or something, it's probably going to be garbage. Yeah, that's what's been my experience. That's why when you say that, I'm like, well, there's a lot of good poetry out there, but yeah, it's not just going to find you. You're going to have to go out and seek it, you know. And it's also great because he has his main character despise poetry, you know. So to also do that within the story in itself. Rothfuss is funny, man. He has one hell of a sense of humor, and it's quite, I was going to say sophisticated. It's just quite, I don't really know how to put it. I don't know, specific. It's very like well thought out. You know what I mean? Like he clearly has fun with the way that he's shaping the story and kind of doing little winks to himself and to you and to the close reader, and you know, it's pretty great.
Well, because we're only in Kvothe's head, I mean, the dialogue is immensely important. I mean, it's you can sacrifice. You don't need to do as much with dialogue as as Rothfuss has to do if you're not doing a first person narration.
Yeah. I mean, he absolutely he goes well beyond. That's why these are so tremendous. That's why they're at like elite level in terms of the way that I look at it in terms of literature, because he's going much further than what is necessary to just tell the story. You know, clearly that's why it takes so long. So he takes so much crafting with it. But also with Kvothe, what's so interesting is the narrator is a guy waiting to die. He's gone through so much in terms of advancement, but then also the deepest of depression, and that's the state he's in now. And that's where the story's being delivered from. Yet he's going to still have the ups and downs because he's sort of reliving it. But we've heard him tell it before. We've heard Kvothe tell it before that reliving it doesn't necessarily bring him out of the doldrums. It makes it worse.
Yeah.
Because of how bad things eventually get.
I think a lot of people, when they get impatient with the book, I think, you know, a lot of them are like, well, yeah, he's got a lot of plots tied together, but, you know, just put it out. It's like, man, I don't think you appreciate how difficult his task is, because he, you know, the way he writes, the high level of prose that he writes at, the fact that it's first person almost the whole book, and, you know, so how much dialogue's important, and how much more difficult it is to develop characters and have character development for all these side characters when you're not in their head. It's a much harder task than if you're writing a typical book where you're in multiple characters' heads and you can develop them through their thoughts. And so when you take that away, that ups the difficulty. Then his prose ups the difficulty. Then the fact that he writes so much in verse, that ups the difficulty. And so, and the puzzle that he's weaved, it's very intricate. It's much more intricate than most books that you're going to come across. That's why people read these books 10, 20 times to figure out all the little pieces that they might be missing. So it's an extremely difficult task to put it together. So if he's like, it's not ready, then I'm comfortable trusting that he knows whether it's ready or not. And the idea of just put something out. Like, no. This is you're talking about a series that could go down as one of the greatest of all times. Like, you don't just put something out. This is going to be you're one generation. You're one generation. This will live long past your death if he does it right.
I think also one of the biggest limiting factors is his bar is set ridiculously high. If you consider what he did with music in book 1, which he also did in book 2, but then he brings in the Adem, and that whole revealing and that building of that world, and the Fae as well. These are things that completely spin the story, and they give you this picture that you did not see coming. I didn't see that coming. Like, he built up what the Adem was going to be. He play all those little Easter eggs to give us those pieces of what it's going to be. I still didn't see coming what came. My point being, he's going to do something like that in book 3, because I think that's how high his bar is. That he has all these particular things that he's weaved, and all these complications in the worlds, and all these interconnected complications that are involved as well. But then there's still these things that come out of left field that are shocking, you know. Maybe that's not the right word, but really builds out what your expectation was, and then sort of eviscerates it and then pushes it much further. He's been able to do that amongst the 2 books. I don't think he's going to put out book 3 and not do something of the sort again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I trust that he knows, you know, what he's doing, and, you know, and until he puts out a fucking clunker. I mean, if he bombs, then I'm going to be like, well now I'm not fucking putting my faith in your writing anymore. Like,
well, I guess to just further articulate what I meant by what I was just saying is that's what I'm saying is, like, if he had it to a point where it's like the whole story works, but he didn't have something that did that, you know, like Kvothe. I think Kvothe, like with fighting the bandits, or again, like the Lay of Sir Savian Treliar, like the way those chapters work, the way, like, it sets this high expectation for the experience of the reader. if you didn't have like a number of those in book 3, he would feel like, well, it's not hitting the note. You know what I'm saying? So I also have, I guess what I'm saying is I also have that faith that he's not going to put out something that doesn't hit all these things after he's done it twice. So he's got a standard that he knows what he was able to accomplish. I want him to hit all those standards. I want it to even be even better. And I have to wait another 5-10 years. I'm willing to do so if it's going to be that great.
Well, and the other aspect of it is now there's an end. Like he knows how the book ends. Yeah. So it's not, he's got to push everything into that ending so that it fits into that ending. Whereas when he's ending book 1 or he's ending book 2, it's much more open-ended because he has another book that he can do things with. This is wrapping up a trilogy. So obviously you can write more stories in the world and all those kind of things, but it has to feel like this is a trilogy. This is a complete story.
Well, it
can't end on a mass, just massive cliffhangers. It has to wrap up the story.
Yeah, it has to end with Kvothe in the end waiting to die, right?
Yeah.
How did he get here? That's the end of the story, is how he got there, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, something to that effect. I don't know exactly how it's going to end, but it has to feel like...
We talked about it's all a fever dream.
Yeah. It's got to wrap up the... it's got to wrap up the trilogy. Even if there's... You get to the end and it's like, okay, there's more story for Kvothe to tell. Like, now what happens afterwards.
Live his life. Yeah.
But it still has to wrap up this trilogy. I mean, it can't be like, you get to the end and it's just a cliffhanger and you feel like, now I need book 4 to find out, how this story ends. It's like, no, it has to feel like an end to the trilogy, even if there's more story to tell.
Yes, I agree.
So it's an extremely difficult task, and so I'm patient for that reason because I understand like as much as I want to know how the story ends, it's not my legacy. It's not my legacy. It's not, I don't have all this charity and all these people that work for me and my kids and my family and all these things I created are relying upon me fucking coming through. Like, I just have to read it and I get to enjoy it or not. His legacy is on the line. His future, as an author is on the line.
And it's how great book 1 and book 2 are only as great as the next one. Because it's an overall story. And if the third sucks, then the first 2 all of a sudden aren't that great. They're better in comparison, but that hurts the overall.
Yeah, I mean, he could put out a book that's not great, and I don't like. It won't change the fact that the first 2 books are awesome. It's just I won't look at the trilogy as like, man, that trilogy is one of the best stories ever. It's like book 1. It would always be book 1 and 2 are fucking phenomenal. Book 3 kind of shit the bed.
It's not sticking the landing.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to stick the landing. It doesn't change how great book 1 and 2. Now, what would change it is
1 and 2 were damn good. A lot of people aren't so into 3. So
but the 3 didn't change the fact that 1 and 2 are legendary movies.
Yeah, I know. I was using that as an example to sort of devil's advocate what I was saying earlier.
Yeah. But yeah, the way he could hurt it is if he does things in book 3 that undercut book 1 and 2. That if he does that, then that's going to be a major problem. If he just throws in things that completely negate what happened in book 1 and 2, that would be a major problem. That would definitely hurt those books.
Yeah, that would be extraordinarily disappointing. That's not careful.
I don't think I cannot imagine he would do that. But that's one way you could really hurt those books. But so that's why I'm more patient than most, and a lot of these people they have read this book for the first time like a couple years ago or a year ago or 3 years ago. Like I bought the book the day it came out and I was finished the next day. There's not many people that have been waiting longer than me. So if you're super impatient and being a a dick online. Like, because I read so much stuff on what's going on online, what fans are saying. Like, it's a daily stream of people
Yeah, I know.
tagging him going, "Where's book 3, you dick? Fucking put it out. Why aren't you fucking releasing book 3? Where's book 3? Where the fuck's book 3?" It's like, shut the fuck up.
Well, what we find out also is that they're at fault for why it's not out, because they're spilling his slushy and kicking him in the balls every day.
Yeah.
After
Stop
he's getting
kicking
all
him in the
these-
slushy, man.
After he's getting all these compliments, somebody has to knock over his slushy and kick him in the balls. And then all he thinks, that was the way he put it, was like, you can get all these great compliments, but then you remember that guy that spilled your slushy and kicked you in the balls.
Yeah, and I mean, it's honestly, it's hard, like, when you got a deluge of people doing that every single day, it's hard to not have any impact on you. But more so than I think than like delaying the book, I think more so it just makes him want to reduce his interaction with fans.
Probably, yeah, I would imagine.
And if it was me, if he had my personality, I would troll the shit out of those people, and I would put every one of them on blast. I would have like my 200,000 fans, and I would sick them on those people every day. Anytime someone said that, I would retweet them, and I would put them on blast, and I would make their accounts go private, and I would have my fans harass every one of those people. Like, ask him about his job every single day. Where is the next paycheck? Where's my next project? Like,
where's my TPS
do
report?
something for me.
Where's my TPS report? Did you get your TPS report? Man? You haven't done it yet? You haven't done it yet? What are you doing? Why didn't you get it done?
Yeah, I would.
How much are you weighing right now? Did you lose weight today? Did you lose weight from the last week? Like, dude,
I would be going to war. I would be going to war with people just because I think I would find it funny. Like, if someone tried to, harass me, and they were thinking like, "Oh, I'm just, I'm some nobody, so I could just, shoot in a little insult and no one's going to say anything because, I got like 30 followers, no big deal." It's like, well, you're going to be in for a long fucking day, buddy. Because I have a lot more than that, and I'm going to send all of them to you.
I'm basically the opposite of that. If I was in Rothfuss's shoes, I would go dark. I would have gone dark a long time ago. I'd be like, I'm just going to work on this in a cabin. Everybody leave me the fuck alone. I'm not going to have anything to do with any of it. Yeah. Because I fucking hate it. I hate all that shit. I'm not good with other people throwing negative shit at me. So
no, it would be annoying, so I would have to have fun with it, and that would be my fun, is you try
That's
to
not bad.
You try to fucking pee in my Cheerios, I'm going to fucking take a dump in yours. But so back to the Q&A though. He goes, one of the other questions he got is, will you tie up all loose ends in book 3? And he says, I won't be answering everything, but the truth is you don't want me to. And so he talks about like, you can't go through and just be like, so what was Lauren and Viari talking about and all those kind of things. Like, if you answer every single question, every single behind the scenes, what did him and Brandor talk about when they were leaving that room, or what are some of the conversations him had with Ambrose and and if you try to piece together every single thing, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be a good story.
No, it won't flow naturally.
Especially when you're doing a story that's a first person narration, because then it would have to be everybody is just coming up and admitting what they did to Kvothe.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially in that sense, it's not first person narration has to be like life itself. He's not going to know everything. Yeah. He's not, you don't find out the answer to every little thing. You still have those impressions that haunt you as time goes on. So that's part of life. It would be very unnatural to have everything just tie up so tightly, so clean. It's just not, that's not how life works. That's not how stories are supposed to work, man. Some things are supposed to be left open. Yeah. It's actually those are some of my favorite books, man, is where it's like you're at the end, you're kind of like, you have to sit for a while and like, so what was all that about? And then you just play it out in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, that's why part of what makes these books so fun is thinking about the books and them the implications and, you know, where things might go and what all these things could mean. So if you get to the third book and there's nothing else to think about, that would be a little bit disappointing to begin with.
Yeah. It's like, well, that was it.
Yeah.
Guess I'm all done. Like,
don't need to think about this ever again.
But that kind of feels like when you're talking about being more patient than most, that guy, the people that are like, where's book 3? Give me book 3. It feels like, I think a lot of the people that end up being frustrated, they're wired differently in the sense that they want the story over. Like, they got to get to the end of it. Once it's done, now they move on. And if it's not done, they can't move on. I like it's not done. I like this. I like this period of being able to do what we've been doing, which is connecting the dots, looking at the story, looking at what isn't being. And we've come across plenty of things in the first 2 books that won't be coming out until book 3. We now know that.
Even if I was like that, still at that point, then I'm just like, okay, well then I'm just gonna read
other books,
mute anything that has to do with these books, and I'm gonna fucking move on. And I'm just gonna find other series books. Because like there's an endless supply. There's way more books than you could ever read in a lifetime. So like, you know, if you're not getting enjoyment out of this series and analyzing them and waiting, and it's just making you angry. It's like, what are you doing? Just like fucking stop following him. Stop following the news about the series. Like, block all that shit and mute it all. And then like move on to other series that are done. There's tons of them. There's more finished series than you could ever read in a lifetime. So if that's your thing, well, like there's so much of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, eventually, if this comes out, you can always come back to it if it comes out. But why torment yourself and wallow in that shit? It doesn't make any sense to me. But then he also says, will book 3 be the last in the series? Yes. He says yes and no. Book 3 closes this arc of story. Book 3 will not be the final book set in this world. Big distinction there.
I love that. I loved hearing that, man.
Yeah.
That's so great for me. Like,
yeah.
I love that.
Well, this was from 5 years ago. This is what he had always said, like, for a long time he'd been saying that. Like, there will be more stories in this world, which, great. Because it'd be awful if he just ended this and there's no more stories in Timuran, because it's a massive world he created. Doesn't make any sense to not explore other parts of the world and other stories and other people and characters. And so much to explore. In the most recent Q&A, someone asked him about what was it? It was, will you finish Kvothe's story with the third book? And he's just said no. So that could mean a couple of things. It could mean that he wraps up this arc of him retelling his story to Chronicler, and it ends with the openness of the possibility of him becoming Kvothe again, or he does become Kvothe again, and he's ready to leave the Waystone. He's ready to go out into the world, so we could be getting what happens after. You know, we get the first 3 books tell us what happened before. We get the groundwork of his whole life, and then the next book, you know, would be moving forward in a completely different story. And, you know, not a retelling of a story. It'd be what happens now.
It'd be yeah.
So it could be that, awesome. Or it could be that he's going to tell some of the stories that he leaves off, like what happened, you know, on his trip to the Mare with the pirate ship and that you know, the pirates attacking his ship and him dying and all those kind of stories.
Yeah. I mean, and it could also be these other stories are being told about the world, and Kvothe's just a side character.
Yeah.
He's not the main guy anymore, or he's a myth in the story, you know, but he's still alive in the story. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it could. It could be like that. He's just tangentially related to the story, which would be disappointing. I mean, when you say, "Is this going to finish Kvothe's story?" and if you're just like, you know, you're being cute there, that would kind of be disappointing. Like when you say flat out no, hopefully that means there's more Kvothe books.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's. I'm looking forward to a redemptive arc. I think that'd be pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like, and I'd like to see what adult Kvothe would do in the world, like to have all that power and ability, but have some experience and not be a kid that does a lot of brash, stupid things all the time. Have a little bit of, he's gone through some shit and failed and has a little more humility. And so he's, he's not this young fucking brash kid anymore. See what that kind of Kvothe would be like.
Yeah, I think it'd make for a great story.
Let's see. Then we also have, do you ever plan, someone asked him this. Do you ever plan on writing a book through an Edema Rue's eyes?
What?
Kvothe is Edema Rue.
Did they mean? I guess they meant something else.
Yeah, he didn't even answer. It was just like kind of just like looking at the screen, like, "What? Are you fucking kidding me?" Yeah, yeah, that's this series, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've done.
Kvothe has mentioned one or two. It's subtly. It's in there. Like it's. He doesn't like slam it in your face, but Kvothe subtly lets you know that he is a member of the Edema Rue.
Yeah, he had that edema drip, right? Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah.
That's
he
when
caught the edema drip at one point in the book, I think. Something like that.
I'm guessing probably it would actually be very interesting to see the world through the eyes of somebody that is in the Adem, the Adem. That would be interesting.
Yeah,
just in terms of how they communicate, how they it's a completely different. It's a completely different sort of way to.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that with every culture. Would be interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, the culture is very interesting.
That one to me stands out because it's so vastly different in the way they view things. But yeah,
let's see. Then we also have how many places will there be in book 3 that we've never seen before? And he said many, more than 3. So we know a few of these. We know the Rainier, where the king is. We know that we're going to see the Fae world again. That's where he's going to meet Bast. And we're also going to see Junpui, which he mentioned. That in the latest stream, he said Junpui is going to be in book 3. And he seemed really jacked about that part of the story. He's super jacked to get into some bird law.
I think I get the feeling that what he has written that's in Junpui, either he wrote it recently or he's just like really, really pleased with it. Because you could tell he got a little bit excited about that, which got me excited because I've always thought the little stat sheet we get about his time in Junpui sounds like a fucking awesome story.
Yeah,
but it just all got left out.
Well, he's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna retell that. I don't think he's gonna go backwards. I think he's going to go there in book 3. And he's gonna go back.
I guess my point is that just that feeling though leaves the impression that I don't know. Just gave me the impression that it could have been an exciting story, and the fact that he is going there and he seemed to be excited about when he told about it, kind of tied in with that same emotion.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna get. He's gonna go. I mean, he's gonna go to Junpui, and yeah, so he seems pretty jacked about that. So that should be fun. But also too, the fact that he's talking about he's gonna go to many new places, I think also lends a lot of weight to the fact that Kvothe is going to find like a Fae Reenial and travel in and out of these places, because otherwise, like, he's traveling by foot or carriage or boat from place to place to place. Like, this would be long stretches of time that would be going by to be able to travel to many places around the world. I think he's going to. I do think that lends towards the fact that I've said I think what's going to happen is that because he's going to have to. I think he's going to go back to the mayor. Because Stapes, that ring with Stapes has got to come into play. The Lackless box, her secret box, I think that has to come into play. So you think he's going to go back to Severin, or at least meet up with them, and then he's got to go to see the king. He's got to go to the Fey world. So I think there's more than likely going to be that there's going to be the Mario warp zones that he finds and is able to fucking travel from point A to point B much more quickly.
Green pipes.
Yeah.
There was a question about the Fae that made me think differently to some dimensional level about the Fae, in the sense that somebody asked if there are stars in the Fae, and he said yes, but not the same ones.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting to sort of I don't know, peel away.
Yeah, they're clearly in another dimension. Like, I mean, because there's certain times where had he walked past the Greystone with Florian, had he done it at another time, he would have just continued through the forest. Mm-hmm. But instead, he went through another dimension and is in the Fae. So that they have to be on like separate planes of existence. Like it's not like you can just, there's somewhere on the map you go and you're in the Fae. You have to go through like a portal to get there. So clearly there's a portal aspect to it. I think Fae Renial is going to be how they talk about it as the road that, the place that connects to all roads. All roads, are connected through Fae Renial. So I think that's how he's going to be able to get from point A to point B much more quickly.
So you think they're going to do a product launch of book 3? The parts with the Fae is just like the game Portal, and it's a new version of the game Portal.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. 100%.
Set in Fae Renial.
Yep.
Fae Renial.
Yeah. Yeah, he just writes he just takes the entire story of Portal and puts it in there for the Fae, and Bast is the machine that helps him.
Well, I was more thinking they make the new Portal game using the physics of the game Portal, but use Fae Renial and Rothfuss's world that he creates. Could be the other way around,
Yeah.
Chicken and the egg, bruh.
Yeah, that's 100% what's going to happen.
Well, you agreed with the first part. Now you're agreeing with the second part.
Yeah.
So which one is it?
Both.
Oh, okay.
And that's the crazy thing about the Fae. But then, let's see, we got, will book 3 make me cry? Depends. If you're an easy crier, I hope to hit you hard emotionally. Would you say?
I said, are you a big puss?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, there's never been a book or a movie that's made me cry, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is not going to make me cry. But
I don't know.
He says, I hope to hit you hard emotionally. So I think there are going to be some deaths that we don't want to see. So I do think that's going to happen. But yeah, I think there are going to be some people that are going to be crying their eyes out. I probably will not be, but I will be sad to see someone get murked without the tears.
Anything that makes anything that's driving at the emotions. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Very good writing. Of course, you have to give a shit. That's key. If it's about somebody you give a shit about, then yes, that's when you can get emotional about it.
Yeah. And then they asked him,
because you are a cyborg, and cyborgs don't really get emotional.
So no, I can't leak that. I can't lose fluid I don't have. Then someone asked him, would you speak with the Kvothe if you had the chance, or avoid it completely? And he said there'd have to be something I wanted an awful lot. I can't imagine why you would talk to the Kvothe. Yeah, I mean, he's clearly, his desire is to see the worst possible outcome. So
yeah, to ruin your life. You'd have to assume that because of how high the risk is, that you're risking complete ruination of your life. So what could be that desperate?
Well, you know for certain that if you talk to him, he's going to pick the worst possible path for the world, or for you, or for both. So even if you get something you want out of that, it's still you're going down a bad path.
Yeah.
So no, I would not. There's no. And then he also talked about, and then he talked about like putting out the book. But so here's some of the stuff that he's talked about in the last couple of days, and then we'll get to the prologue. Said, are the Adim and the Ademaru connected historically? Said, very good and smart question. And then the person stupidly asked a second question. And so he goes, oh, well, you got another question. So I'll answer that one. Instead of asking one question, letting him answer
letting him yeah.
No, you're like, I'm going to fucking put out 20 questions. Like, well, now he's just going to pick the one he wants to answer. No, pick one question. Your most pertinent question. Don't fucking throw out a bunch. Because I wanted to hear that answer. Because I believe that the Adim and Ademaru all were Ruach in the beginning. And the group that didn't join the Angels or the Emir, like we've talked about in previous episodes, I think of those two groups, the Ruach formed the Angels and the Emir, and then the third set of Ruach went and did their own thing. I think that spawns, the Adim, the Ademaru, and like the Tinkers, and all those different groups are all formed out of the Ruachs that did not join the Emir or the Angels. So I was curious to hear what he would have to say about that, if he would give any clue away. But the jackass asked a second question, and he answered that instead.
What was the second question?
It was unnoteworthy because I didn't even take any notes on it. It was a question I wasn't interested in.
Is Denna attractive?
Yeah, it was something that wasn't worth it. And then we have, why does the Great Stone Road curve, or does it not? And he said, yes, it does, and it was purposeful. I don't know exactly what that means, what the significance of it is, but there's some significance to the fact that the Great Stone Road curves, and you can see it on the map. You can see that it curves, and it's purposeful, but I don't know what the purpose would be.
Yeah, I remember when he said that. He said that yes, it does, and then it sounded like it was somewhat important, and then he did say yes, and that is done with intention, something like that.
Yes. We also get that someone asked him why Kvothe hates poetry, and he was like, he's a young fucking pig-headed kid, but someone also said, his dad hated poetry, and Rothfuss pointed out, he was like, yeah, see? It's like, that's my kind of reader. You're paying close attention. That's something we've talked about as well, that Rothfuss, a lot of the personality traits that Kvothe has, like his love of cloaks, as the music, the hatred of poetry, a lot of those things were instilled in him from his childhood, and he lost his parents suddenly. And so the fact that he clung on to these personality traits is not surprising. Like that he hates poetry, because like when his dad is shitting on poetry, young Kvothe is not joining in on him like, yeah, I hate it too. It was after his dad got fucking killed that all of a sudden now Kvothe also has a deep-seated hatred of poetry. And so I think these are things that obviously Rothfuss is letting us know, yes, these are intentional, that I purposely made him hate poetry, and his dad hate poetry, and then after his dad gets killed, now he hates poetry too. That's purposeful. And we find out that someone asked how much time at the university in book 3. He said more than 10%, less than 50%. And then the big piece we get is Tinkers go everywhere, including the Fae. And someone asked, are the Fae polite to Tinkers? And he said, the ones who aren't stupid are. The Fae know the score. So I think that's significant, because we talked about all the way back in episode 1. I talked about like the fact that when Kvothe asked, how are the roads? Like, did anybody give you any trouble? And the Tinker was like, oh no, it's not, times are not near so bad that anybody would mess with a Tinker. And it was like the fact that, and like you have the, Tinker will pay you back 3 times for any insult made. Like there's obviously a fear built into society about fucking with Tinkers. You just don't do it. And when seemingly they should be easy targets. And so the fact that no one does, and there's this built-in fear of it, it seems to show that they must have major power. That I don't think that they're just human. And the fact that they're traveling into the Fae and the Fae don't even fuck with them, I think it is strong evidence for like the fact that I say that they came from the Ruach. I think that is going to be the case, that they are from the most powerful people in the world, and they're just like the Adim and the Ademaru form their group. I think the Tinkers are going to be Fae versions of an offshoot of the Ruach, whereas the people that formed the Ademaru and the Adim became humans. The Tinkers went the Fae route and, became Fae creatures that travel the world and do their thing and have magical abilities.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly, like you said, they're easy targets. They're traveling by themselves and they carry tons of valuables. You would think easy to poach these guys. They got one serious marketing plan, The marketing is don't fuck with these guys, and people don't.
Yeah, and it's not just marketing, right. Clearly, because he just laid it out right there.
That's what I'm saying. They have clearly the stories. The whole world has all these stories, right? There's warnings in the stories. I think enough people know the score. I guess it goes with the Tinkers.
All right, and so on the question answer we got from the latest one, when he read the prologue, we had like, what was someone's childhood like? He mentions that we're going to get more on that. Then we have, are the Tinkers human, a mere Fae, or something else? He said, fair question. So again, there's something to them. And will we learn who or what the Kvothe is? He said, that's in the books. You just got to read it. And a lot of people think that the Kvothe is Scarpy or another character or so there's different theories on who the Kvothe is. I think the Kvothe is just the Kvothe, and I think that he's hinting towards that is like, if he's saying like, you can see who the Kvothe is, just go read the second book.
Yeah,
it's in there. Like the fact that he wasn't more cagey on it is it doesn't lend strong evidence towards the theory that he's like Scarpy or something like that.
The part that I found intriguing about that line of questioning was when somebody asked if he would be telling the story about how the Kvothe came to be, and he said, "Well, that's a big story," and he said that may be revealed after Doors of Stone, if not in Doors of Stone. So he kind of suggested that yes, there's a bigger story to be told there, and it didn't sound like necessarily he's written it, but it's an interesting story that it seemed what he was getting at is that he would be interested to write it, and it probably wouldn't fit into Doors of Stone.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting to me, that line. I've always been extraordinarily interested in the Kvothe because just as a literary tool, it's extraordinarily interesting to bring that in.
Yeah.
That element of like that question, would you talk to? Well, you'd have to be at the absolute most desperate point, knowing of what the likely circumstances or the results would be. So just bringing that in, it's such an interesting.
I think, some people are like, well, I just don't think. What was it? Is it not on omnipotence? Is omnipotence the all seeing? Whatever the all seeing is, omniscience or omnipotence. I think omniscience, but whatever.
Omnipotent.
Whatever. The fact that he can. No, I'm saying the fact that he's not all powerful. He's all seeing. I can't remember what the word is, but regardless, it doesn't matter. The fact that he can see all possible futures, some people are like, well, that's too powerful. And it's like, well, there's limiting factors to that. He can see, like he can make, when he meets Kvothe, he can send Kvothe down the worst possible path for Kvothe, but he can't make everything he wants to happen. Every bad thing he wants to happen, he cannot make that happen if Kvothe's too limited to make that happen. Like if you put a blind mute in front of him, he's not going to be able to crumble the world with some blind mute, who has no legs. Like that person's not going to be a useful tool to him. So he's not all powerful. He can't just make anything he wants happen. He can only send Kvothe down his worst possible path. His worst possible path. Doesn't necessarily mean that his worst possible path is the ultimate worst case scenario for the world that he would want to see. Might not be that case.
So what you're trying to say is he's not all powerful, but he knows everything?
He knows,
yeah. What you're going for? Okay, yeah.
Well,
so that's omniscient. That's omniscient versus omnipotent.
Yeah, I know that. I'm saying some people talk about the fact that the Kvothe can see all possible futures as that's too powerful, and I'm saying that they're not considering the limitations. Yes, he can send you down your worst possible path. That does not necessarily mean that it's worse. What if your worst possible path has no impact on the world whatsoever? Because you're just not you're not an important figure.
Yeah. What if it's positive? What does that say about you? That's hurtful.
Yeah. Well, no, that means
that's an ultimate way to insult somebody.
It means you're amazing or you're just completely inconsequential.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's a bad feeling.
Yeah.
To be completely inconsequential.
Yeah.
Not exactly omnipotent. That'd be more impotent.
Yeah. Now, if he was all powerful, then that's, that is not as interesting. But the fact that he can see all possible futures and he would like to send the world down the worst possible path, but he's limited because he's stuck in this tree. He seems like he can't leave and he can't lie.
Well, I was going to say he can't lie, and he can only have influence if you go to him.
Yeah, and
that's
he seems to be benevolent.
Limited.
Yeah,
that's
extraordinary. And you have people that will try to kill anybody who talks to him. So it's a very interesting character to me.
That's a hell of a lot more interesting than if he was, like you say, if he was omnipotent and he could travel. Then you just have this guy laying waste to the world.
Yeah,
get out of the way.
That's why. Yeah. I don't think Rothfuss can make him Scarpy, because if the Kvothe is malevolent and he's Scarpy, he could completely destroy the world in no time flat.
Slow game?
He could do it. Yeah, he could do it in no time flat. If his goal was absolute destruction, he could just destroy the world. As soon as he got free, he would be just a walking machine of chaos.
Well, that would be more like Braden style, where it's like, well, I'm playing a beautiful game. But if the goal is to end everything, then you're just
why? I mean, there would be no game. What's the game? He already knows how it's going to end. Like he would know, so he would just choose the direct path to get there.
Yeah.
And then we have where the 7 cities of the Urgan Empire, all in the 4 corners, are spread throughout the world. He said they were all throughout the world. And here's another big one.
He said they're not all in the 4 corners.
Correct. Yeah. So spread throughout the world.
Oh, okay. I wasn't hearing you. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So not all in the 4 corners.
Got it.
And then he asked, will we meet Remen in book 3? And he said, we will meet Remen, but I don't want to get too much into it. So Remen is Bast's dad. Kvothe introduced him as like son of Remen, prince of the Twilight Mel or whatever, Twilight Mel, whatever he says. But so Remen is Bast's dad. And there's a big theory that Kvothe and Felurian are Bast's parents. And I think, this throws a huge wrench in it. And there also is, there's playing cards for the Kingkiller Chronicles, some kind of card game. And Remen is one of the characters on that card game. So he's going to be in book 3. I don't think there's going to be a scenario where it's like Remen is Bast's adoptive father, but Kvothe is his real father. I don't think that's
Kvothe is Remen, because he's not. He's Reshi.
Yeah, he's not Remen. And I mean, there's playing cards. They're 2 separate people. He's not. Yeah. Remen is a Fae creature, so we know he's not Remen. And I don't think we're going to go the route where Bast isn't really Remen's father. And it just gets too convoluted when you have this character. You have the Bast is 150 years old. Like you could do things to make it all fit, but it's very convoluted, and that's just not his style.
It's cheap. It's kind of cheap because you're throwing somebody off the scent just to throw them off the scent.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, just to throw it in, just to, yeah, yeah, it's a little bit cheap for his style, is the way that I would say it.
Yeah, he just doesn't write like that. And he doesn't have like these weird twists that there's just no reason for it.
As far as I've heard, he hates those types of twists.
Yeah.
so like the idea that he's going to put him in his own work of art, I don't see that.
Yeah, the fact that Remen is a character in the book and it's not Kvothe, I think, that to me that squashes that theory. I think there's almost no chance that Kvothe is Bast's father. Let's see, what spoiler-free plot? I love some of these questions. What spoiler-free plot points have been the most difficult to iron out? What do you mean? Any mention of plot is going to be a spoiler? Terrible question.
I like the all plot is spoilery.
Yeah,
I like the use of the word spoilery.
Is there
I'm definitely not answering that.
Yeah, and is there magic related to music? He said yes, which lends a lot of weight towards our theory that when Kvothe is playing music, especially when he was a kid and he was playing by himself and he was playing the wind turning a leaf and those kind of things, that it seemed to have a magical quality to it. Or when people listen to him play, they get wrapped up in it. I think there seems to be some kind of magical quality to his ability to play music. And the fact that there is magic related to music lends a lot of weight towards that theory.
Yeah, I agree. The simple yes in itself, it's there. It could be another thing where you could say, well, it's there. It's in the book. When he's suggesting subtly, it's evident. It's like you might as well have an exclamation point next to it.
Yeah.
Because it's all of the subtlety is meaningful. And when he plays, like that first time after he was a vagrant, and then he's with Dinah. Who's he with? That guy, the dude that was with Dinah at that point that had a lute. Kvothe starts playing it, and everybody's like fucking shocked.
Yeah,
right? It's not just that he's really good; it goes beyond that because like Dinah fucking runs away weeping.
Yeah,
it's like people are entranced,
Yeah, it happens repeatedly. It seems to be more than just playing music, and so that lends some weight to that. Or there's also the Chandrian Fear, the singers, is one of the groups that the Chandrian Fear. So we've asked, do they fear the story, singers telling stories about them, or is it actually there's magic to the singing? Could be that like the Tall have some kind of magical ability with their singing, because I do think the Tall are the singers.
That gives a lot. Yeah, that gives a lot more weight to that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
But I think Kvothe likely possesses a similar or same power that whatever, if they have some kind of magical ability with their music, I think Kvothe has it as well. Then has your vision of the themes of the story stayed the same or grown with you? And he's like, I don't know what fucking themes are.
Yeah, that cracked me up, man. That's such an interesting answer from someone who's doing what he's doing, because there's themes in the book, but he's not intentionally injecting themes.
Yeah,
he's
just telling his story.
Well, but he's thoughtfully creating something that is very human, and within that is contained theme. It's impossible to not contain theme if it's good writing and it's about humanity. There's going to be theme, but it wasn't a flippant response, but the way his response was, where it's just like, I don't even know. I don't know what a theme is.
He treats it like when Alon's like, describe blue. And he's just like, how do you describe that? I don't know what a fucking theme is. I don't know how to describe it. And, because like if you try to pin it down, then, you see how difficult the task is.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, the idea that, and that's a funny exercise that sometimes they'll do in like writing courses, where it's like, write your theme in a sentence, and it's like, well, fuck, man, like there should be more nuance than just. I can kind of say it's this, but it better be bigger than that, or my story's not very successful.
No. If you can write it in a sentence, you probably have some kind of narrative agenda that is going to bleed through and turn off a bunch of people.
Limited. It's going to feel limited, and they don't get to participate in the unraveling of the theme, and instead it's just hitting you right in the face. It's not a lot of fun for the reader.
No. Then we got these. Let's see. We got meet and greets. What is there going to? Oh, here's a good one. What I wouldn't give to see those embedded notes. And he said, I've considered publishing a version of the books once the trilogy is solid and complete. For real deep geeks who are really into it, and all my notes would be footnotes. So he's talking about like putting out a special edition of the books that have all his footnotes that in all the notes he's taken while he's writing. He has those all in the footnotes to the book, which I think could be kind of cool to see, like his process of how he got to where he got in the books. I think that would be cool. I would definitely buy that.
It's interesting. I mean, I don't know if you've ever read any books like that are from, like 100, 200 years ago, which they depending on when it's from, they can encapsulate the cultural influence that came from the story, but they can also kind of give you the picture of how it got there just from the cultural influences towards, well, not just culture, but towards the author and what they ended up, executing. It's interesting in itself. It's like it becomes bigger than just the story itself. I think it's worth having along with the book because you can read it in a whole different context. I mean, it kind of limits in to a degree, but then it also kind of builds it out and gives more sort of concrete significance to it in terms of this space and time. I'd be interested.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people would.
Why doesn't he do that first? Do that before.
Yeah, just do that now. Give me all your notes right now. Let me read them. It's kind of, that is an area where I'm like, yes, people should be asking him, why can't I see your notes right now? Let me see them. They're already written.
Yeah, just give me all the notes. You're not
like every time you write a new note, post that. He was also asked, will we be introduced to new realms like the Fae in book 3? And he said, yes-ish, sort of, maybe, a bit, kind of. I'm not vacillating, just trying to be as honest as I can. I don't know what really to take out of that, other than, he doesn't really necessarily consider the Fae a separate realm. Not sure how it could not be a separate realm when, you walk through a different plane and you're there. It's like a different plane of existence and a different time with different stars, and it's a portal aspect to it. It's not like a place on a map.
I wonder if that suggests that something might change about it. I don't know. I don't know. I found the answer intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, it's obviously, I think we'd have a better idea once we read book 3, but it's kind of hard to guess just off of that. It's too vague of an answer. Does Kvothe like himself? Said, ooh, damn. I would have to have a team of therapists on a panel to go over that. Do you like working with, like, people ask that all the time. Like, do you like working with Lin-Manuel and Miranda? It's like, dude, quit throwing him this alley-oop in all these Q&As.
Who is it?
He's the guy that wrote Hamilton. He's going to write the songs for, he's part of the crew for, writing the music to the adaptations. And so he's a massive, massive fucking director and writer. And I mean, Hamilton is just enormously massive play.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily successful.
And then
I've heard it. It kind of insists on itself.
Yeah, it definitely. I've never seen it, but it definitely does. I didn't care for it. That's why I never watched it.
Didn't care for it. You ever seen it? Nope.
No. Why would I watch something I didn't care for? It doesn't make any sense. You're not making any sense. You sound real stupid right now.
You're not. Yeah, you're not convincing me.
Yeah.
When someone says that, it's like, I just asked you. You're not convincing me. Okay.
Is it true that the builders of the Great Stone Road also built a tunnel through the Stonewall Mountains? That's the leading question. How did Kvothe and Bass meet? That's in book 3. That's actually been a hard part to get right because you've seen their relationship and now you need to know how they get there. So that's part of what I talk about is why it's hard to write book 3 versus like book 2 or 1, is because you already know where you got to get. And so everything leading up to it has to get to that final destination.
That's really interesting.
There's an end point to it. And so like when you're writing this relationship, you know how it ends. Here is the end of their relationship. This is where they end in this story, in this trilogy. Like, how does it grow to that point?
There are so many times when we've been talking about these 2 books where I've said that, where I'm like, man, I'm really interested to see how they got to this point because of how the relationship is.
Yeah.
It's so like, it's they're not just friends, man. Like they're like friend, colleague, and then he like adores Kvothe to such a degree where it's like, Jesus, and it's almost
hard,
uncomfortable.
It's hard to do it backwards too, because you have to get them to this place. Whereas doing it the other way, you can start them out in this place and then you can grow it however you want. And you can put them through things and then just see where it goes. You're not limited. You're doing it in reverse. You're limited. You have to get them to a certain destination. And so when you're doing an end, it's much more difficult than doing something that's open-ended where you can change things. You can do something completely different. You can change your mind. You can't change your mind like with their relationship.
It's an interesting way to try to, because he is going backwards. It's unlikely maths.
Yeah. It's a prequel, and we've already seen the ending, so he can't change the end. Like, at least with like the book 3, he could change the ending. I don't think he would. I think he has had an idea of how he wanted to end the series. I don't think that's going to change, but he could.
It's the route.
He can't change what we've seen in book 1 and 2. He can't change that. So he's 100% locked in.
Yeah, there's no augmenting that, and their relationship is very interesting because it's not just there's complications to it and how they act around one another and towards one another. So that those complications have to be ferreted out, and the way that he's going to do it, that's why I thought it was so interesting that he said, that's been difficult, because I mean that makes a lot of sense, but it's interesting to hear it directly towards that, because I've felt that way for so long, where it's like, man, because their relationship is a little bit odd. So that's cool.
I'm really, really interested to see how he does that. That's something I've always thought would be difficult to write, and so I'm curious if he's able to kind of stick the landing on that and describe like the journey of their relationship, where it makes sense for them to be the way they are right now, to have that kind of, because it's kind of a weird dynamic where Bast is 150 years old, and it's almost like he's like a student, but he's a student to Kvothe. He admires Kvothe, but he also would be his elder, and so it's kind of a weird dynamic.
And he's still not afraid to like fuck with him, But then he's also like, I mean, there's times that like he'll stare at him sleeping. These little things that he does where it's like, oh my Reshi, where it's like, it's a little. That's what I was saying. I mean, he's strange.
The level of loyalty he has to Kvothe is intense, but then also he'll do things that if Kvothe knew he did them, Kvothe would be furious. Where he's like sending out messages in bottles, and we for all we know, like the Chandrian or Ajax are looking for Kvothe, and this dude's like, "Hey, he's over here!" Like, dude, what are you doing, man?
It's I mean, just in itself, he's a very interesting character because he is a little bit he's like exuberant, but he's also almost a little bit irresponsible with his with like like what you just described. That's dangerous as shit, man. Like, you're playing with fire.
Yeah.
And these aren't really it doesn't seem like these are things that you really have so much control over. You have a certain amount, and it was successful to a degree of what you wanted to have happen, but people got killed. So, it's a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, trying to bring it back to whatever. I mean, bringing him back to himself. You don't even know what that means. It could be that bringing him back to himself could be disastrous. Maybe there's a reason, like a good reason, why he put himself in this position.
That kind of brings up that question. So would Bass talk to the Kvothe? Is it that desperate? Right? Because he's taking risks.
Considering how scared he sounded of the Kvothe, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, that's really funny. I brought that up because he's one of the examples of why we're like, oh shit, he's fucking dangerous as fuck.
Yeah,
because he flips out.
Yeah, I don't think he would. But that's all the Q&A questions. So now we get to the fucking meat of the episode, which will take up less of the episode. But the big fucking reveal was the prologue.
There were a couple things that you didn't mention that I thought were worth mentioning.
Okay.
Well, one that's pretty small.
It's probably going to be really stupid, so I apologize to the audience.
Somebody asked the population of Tarbine. He said like 1 million-ish, which that's not big. I mean, that's kind of sounds about right. He described it as a shitty fucking cesspool, or I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it was like, yeah, that's how we've been calling it the shithole. So that's kind of what he called it. So that was somewhat gratifying. He did mention there will be a new map will be released, which is pretty cool because I think the first 2 books had the same map, if I remember right.
I think there was more on the second one, but I could be wrong. I'm not a big map guy unless it's a finished map. I don't like the maps where like there's limited information where it's like, man,
super broad.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives you some sort of positioning of the world, but it doesn't really help you. It's not unlocking anything.
No, I mean there can be clues you can discern from them. It's just for whatever reason it's not like my primary interest. So like I usually leave that for other people. If they're into it and they figure out something, I'll read what they find out, but I'm not doing the research myself. I completely rely on other people who are super into that stuff. I do like the Song of Ice and Fire map book. I fucking love those. Those are fucking super dope. But that's like maps of the whole world and
that's getting
a bunch
really
of different maps. And
that's getting really intricate and detailed rather than just being big and broad.
Yeah. But I like that because it's of, it shows the world. It's not like it's not like trying to be cute and have an added piece of a puzzle or something like that, where it's like the map is a puzzle piece. It's like, here's a map of the world. So I dig that, but not trying to figure out a puzzle to solve the world. I don't like it. Just doesn't interest me. So other people who go into it, I just read what they write.
And then one of the bigger things, which we've actually talked about, somebody asked a question about the Creation War, and he basically posited the Creation War as what we've called it is basically the Namers versus the Shapers.
Yeah.
Which basically kicked everything off.
I don't like when whoever asked that, who created the 2 sides of the Creation War. I don't think that's what the person was asking, because that's obvious. The Namers and Shapers said who created the 2 sides of the Creation War.
It was like the first question or one of the first questions. I didn't get it down very quickly because I was like, wait, what?
I think he was asking like, was it Ajax versus Aleph or something like that is what he's more asking. Oh, because obviously it's Namers versus Shapers.
Yeah.
I think he was asking, like, who are the ringleaders?
Oh. Well, other than that, we found out what I've always thought is that Rothfuss said he has a bitter old heart. So we got that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite moments just of the thing is when people were, like, talking shit about, like, all right, already, like, are you going to read it? Are you going to read it now?
Yeah.
And he goes, hey, I'll turn this stream around.
Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot of people that get really upset, like that Rothfuss gets impatient with people, or like chastises people for asking him those things. They're like, like he's a dick to his fans. It's like we have a different definition of what being a dick is, because I would be way more harsh than him, way more harsh, and way more dismissive, mocking. He's so much more patient than I would.
In my experience, he's been extraordinarily diplomatic. Dude, he's he's just playing, and it's not even that crazy. Like, he's playing a little bit, and it's actually funny, and it's entertaining because we all know we're waiting, and like, yeah, that's where he said antis, and then like anticipation, but. Like the part where he's like, I'll turn this stream around cracks me up. Like, as a parent, because you're just like, all right, well, then nobody gets it. How about that? How about that? You want to ask again?
there's so many people that are super jaded, and that colors their perception of everything he says and does, that the things that you just would not expect to be controversial, like, because to me, like, these whole past few days, I've been just like, this is fucking the shit.
Yeah, it's great.
And
it's
getting so much great info, and like, fucking, man, he seems so fucking pumped about his book. And so it just, I get like huge positive vibes. And then I see other people who are just fucking furious about different things. And it's like, oh man, you just like might want to just step away from this series until that book comes out. Like, I don't think this is positive for you in your life. Like, I mean, you feel however you feel, but like, if something brings this much anger and animosity, and it's meant to be entertainment, like, you should let that go. Like, it's not worth it to me.
I don't understand participating. I don't get it. Like, why it's like you're
it's entertainment.
Get yourself riled
like
up.
It's not like this is not like a world matters, that something that impacts your day-to-day life, your job, or something you need to be informed about. Like, should be entertainment. It should be fun. If it's not fun, it's not enjoyable, you're not getting something positive out of it. I just don't even see why you would stick with it. It just seems like I move on from shit all the time.
Well, some people do just shit on it to shit on it. I mean, there's just those people.
I'll give you an example. Sure. Like, there was a point in The Walking Dead where I was just like, I just don't like the show anymore. I don't like the direction it's going, so I just stopped watching it. And I don't ever talk about it or watch it or think about it. I just was like, I enjoyed it up to this point, and then I fucking let it go. Maybe someday I'll go and I'll watch and see if, they turned it back around, but they lost me at some point, and I just moved on. It's like, wasn't no big deal. I didn't fucking, I definitely wasn't like hanging out and chats and hanging out with the fandom and like, yeah. And letting everybody know how mad I am. I was like, man, I don't see how that would, I don't see how that would make my life better. And that would be my main concern.
That's the entertainment. That's the misery loves company thing. Be like, I don't like this. Who else is with me?
Yeah, but
who else is with me?
Then you start like your own. I hate this fucking thing, and like, you don't interact with the people who love it. You just start your own community.
I guess if it's built on I hate this thing, it's kind of.
But like, otherwise, like, you're just fighting with people and arguing all the time. Like, who the fuck wants to do that over something? This should be entertaining. But yeah, so anyways, here let's get to the prologue. And the first part I want to read is the third silence that was in the epilogue for The Wise Man's Fear, because I think that plays into what's going on in this silence. Because the way it ended, it said, the third silence was not an easy thing to notice. If you listen for an hour, you might begin to feel it in the chill metal of a dozen locks turned tight to keep the night away. It lay in a rough clay jugs of cider in the hollow taproom gaps where chairs and tables ought to be. It was in the motley ache of bruises that bloomed across the body, and it was in the hands of the man who wore the bruises as he rose stiffly from his bed, teeth clenched against the pain. The man had true red hair, red as flame. His eyes were dark and distant, and he moved with the subtle certainty of a thief in the night. He made his way downstairs. There, behind the tightly shuttered windows, he lifted his hands like a dancer, shifted his weight, and slowly took one single perfect step. The waystone was his, just as the third silence was his. This was appropriate, as it was the greatest silence of the three, wrapping the others inside itself. It was deep and wide as autumn's ending. It was heavy as a great river-smooth stone. It was the patient cut-flower sound of a man who's waiting to die. The fact that he goes downstairs and he starts practicing his Katan to end the second book, and he takes a single perfect step, like, you know, he talks about with Cheyenne, and that he tried to do with when he was fighting the bandits. The fact that he's going down there and he's practicing his K-Tan, I think is a sign that through telling his story, it is drawing him back to being Kvothe. That he is moving, he at least desires to be back to himself. He wants it. He wants to have his K-Tan. He wants that ability back. It's not something that he has just completely turned aside and let go. Otherwise, he wouldn't be practicing it. He wouldn't have snuck down there and been practicing it at night. I think that is significant because I think it shows that what Chronicle is doing is waking him up. And it shows that Kvothe desires to be Kvothe again.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's a reasonable conclusion to what's being laid out there. And then what we get from here, it seems like it's going in that direction as well.
Correct. Yeah. And so to tie that in with the new prologue, so we'll take it in the 3 parts. So the first part was, it was still night in the middle of nowhere. The Waystone Inn lay in silence, and it was the silence of 3 parts. The most obvious part was a vast echoing quiet made by things that were lacking. If the horizon had shown the slightest kiss of blue, the town would be stirring. There would be the crackle of kindling, the gentle murmur of water simmering from porridge or tea. The slow, dewy hush of folk walking through the grass would have brushed the silence off the front steps of the houses with the indifferent briskness of an old birch broom. If nowhere had been large enough to warrant watchmen, they would have trudged and grumbled the silence away like an unwelcome stranger. If there had been music, but no, of course there was no music. In fact, there were none of these things, and so the silence remained. So the music, it takes added import when he adds in the fact that there is magic music, and that Kvothe could possibly have magical abilities with his music, and that's why. Because it seems like his magic is gone. A lot of his magic is gone, at least. He does break that bottle, seemingly. So a lot of his magical ability seems to be gone. And so it could be that's why he doesn't play his music, as it was part of his magical ability, and he can't do it without his magic.
It almost feels like, I mean, this kind of may be a tangent, but some of that stuff, the music and some of his other powers were things he could control. And then there's the things that he can't control. Like when he first names the wind, he can't control it. It just comes. When he breaks that bottle, it just comes. When he tries to use sympathy later, it doesn't work, right? So when he's trying, it's like almost a sleeping mind, right? It's like it's still there under the surface, but he doesn't have the control of it. Like he's lost that somehow. Like you've brought up maybe something with his hand, something's going on.
Yeah, well, like the sympathy, those things would not be sleeping mind. So I think that's probably part of the difference is maybe he doesn't have his, sympathetic abilities, or because these were, it could have been that these were learned traits. And so that now he's lost all that muscle memory or all the practice he did to build his Alar, and, all the muscle memory of the K-Tan. Like, so he's lost those things because he's not Kvothe. And as Kvothe, he didn't experience those things. He didn't learn them. And so he only has the memory of it. It would be like watching Bruce Lee versus being Bruce Lee. You can watch Bruce Lee do all those things, but just watching him do it doesn't mean you can go do it. Yeah. You have to do it. You have to experience the things. And so as Kvothe, he might not have the experience of Kvothe. So that could be the different factor. Whereas like shaping, it could be something that's not so much dependent on experience. It could be something that is subconscious. And so your subconscious abilities might not go away, whether you're Kvothe or Kvothe. They could just be innate in you. Like maybe naming and shaping could just be like part of you as a human being.
Yeah, and that would speak to his lineage that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Right. So
that could be the different factors between why he can't do some things and he's able to do others. It could be that, the waking mind requires the experience, whereas the sleeping mind is subconscious. It's just innate in you. You just have those abilities. It's just, you know, whether they're unearthed or not, or activated. But I also, as far as just the writing, I mean, the guy has not lost anything. In my opinion, he has not lost anything as far as the writing. I mean, he's he does a really good job of painting a fucking picture.
Yeah, it's tremendous. It's also what we were talking about before, where it's sort of poetic in a prose sort of way. It's got a melody to it, and it's nice. And it's one of the things about all these prologues and epilogues. He's had the ability to do it in a very sort of poetic way, which also carries the theme. Should I call it?
Yeah,
or the mood of what we're in, of this man waiting to die.
The theme that I'm getting from this.
I'm gonna start injecting theme or like projecting theme constantly from now on, just because he doesn't see it. So I'm just gonna tell him where it is and what it is. But it's very consistent with the quality of the previous prologues and epilogues. It's great, man.
So let's go on to the second part, because these next two parts are much more important as far as theory stuff. In the basement of the Waystone, there was the smell of coal smoke and seared iron. Everywhere was the evidence of hurried work. Tools scattered, bottles left in disarray, a spill of acid hissed quietly to itself, having slopped over the edge of a wide stone bowl. Nearby, the bricks of a tiny forge made small, sweet, pinging noises as they cooled. These tiny, forgotten noises added a furtive silence to a large, echoing one. They bounded together like tiny stitches of bright brass thread, the low drumming counterpoint, a timbre beat behind a song. One aspect someone brought up to me on Twitter is like, well, you know, they're making sounds. It's not silence. It's like, well, everything is making sounds in all three. In the prologue and epilogue, there's things making sounds in each of them. It's just they're not sounds that you're actively hearing. You know,
it's like a tree in the woods.
Yeah. If you're not hearing it, is it really, you know, making a sound? If the hissing is so quiet, the only way you could hear it is to get up in it, and it's a hissing that is in a room where no one is in the room. It's not really, you know, a sound. I mean, the only way you're going to have an absence of sound is if you're in a fucking vacuum. And
I think what that person's also missing is that
you're taking it too literal.
Well, yeah, and you're also losing the nuance of what he's doing. We're kind of like floating in this space.
Yeah.
We're not a person in the space. We're our mind in this space.
Yeah.
We're seeing something that's empty.
But he's trying to paint a picture of, like, you know, a room that was bustling and busy and things were getting done, and now it's like, you know, it's all stopped. And
that's where there's
nothing left going on in there. Like
that's where this is especially different than the prologue for book one. There's a lot going on, man. Well, you know what I mean? Like there's like the idea that the evidence of hurried work, tools scattered, bottles left in disarray. If I remember right, book one, there's no hustle bustle left. It's just, you know, basically, it's just like it's like a bunch of bare rooms.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like there's this suggests activity recent. You know, this suggests a lot of recent activity and basically hurriedness that was just going on. You know?
Yeah.
Versus what we've heard before, which is just like it's all just sort of muted, and it's all just this guy waiting to die. You know, it's this gives a lot more quality or a lot more feeling of things are happening, things were just happening. So there's preparation going on. You know.
Yeah, and I think it's important, like, because it's talking about the smell of coal smoke and seared iron. It's like, you know, what is he doing? There's the iron, the seared iron, and there's also the acids. And when you think back to what his conversation that he had with Bast with the the thrice lock chests, they were talking about using acid to burn through the locks or to burn through the wood. And so the fact that there's seared iron and there's acid, it seems like he might be trying to figure out a way to circumvent the locks and things that are preventing him from opening his thrice lock box. So it seems like when you take the fact that he was trying to learn practicing the K10 again, and then also this could be that Chronicler was the one that did this shit, or Bast was the one that did this shit. We see that Bast was in the basement at the first book when Kvothe was telling the story initially to Chronicler. Bast was eavesdropping in the basement. Could be that's Bast's workstation. And so Bast is doing something, trying to figure out some way to open the box. And it's not Kvothe at all. But I think the fact that I think that one of them, is more than likely Bast or Kvothe that is working down there. And I think it is highly likely that what they're working towards is opening the thrice lock box.
Yeah. The mention of the acid definitely suggests that. When I first heard when he was reading the smell of coal smoke, seared iron, hurried work, tools scattered, what came in my mind was like making weapons. It's just what popped in my mind immediately because I was picturing a blacksmith and picturing, sort of like beating out swords, and daggers and whatnot. It's what came to mind. But then when you hear that when the acid comes in, you do have to think about, and then also when the next paragraph he mentions the Waystone's locks, that even goes further. If you weren't already thinking it, that takes it further, But the acid is very fresh in the mind if you consider when he asked Bast, how do you get in the box? How would you get in the box? And he named it the thrice lock box. But I have trouble saying that. That he would possibly use acid, and he's like, oh, well, that could possibly work, but there's these complications to consider as well. So,
yeah. And then the other aspect is the third silence. The third silence was not an easy thing to notice. If you listen long enough, you might begin to feel it in the chill copper of the Waystone's locks turned tight to keep the night at bay. It lurked in the thick timbers of the door and nestled deep in the building's gray foundation stones. And it was in the hands of the man who designed the inn as he slowly undressed himself beside a bare and narrow bed. The man had true red hair, red as flame. His eyes were dark and weary, and he moved with the slow care of a man who is badly hurt or tired or old beyond his years. The Waystone was his, just as the third silence was his. This was appropriate, as it was the greatest silence of the three, holding the others inside itself. It was deep and wide as autumn's ending. It was heavy as a great river smooth stone. It was the patient cut flower sound of a man who is waiting to die. So the big points in there is the locks are made out of copper.
Mm-hmm.
So that's significant. Copper is obviously, it's mentioned throughout the books. Copper is used on the door of Elodin's cage. It's weaved inside the walls. When he tried to break down the walls with calling the name of stone, there was copper in there that held him back. And when he broke down that wall, the copper was still there. He had to knock that away. He didn't turn that into sand like he did the stone. Then Taborlin, there's a story of Taborlin where his sword is made out of copper. So copper it seems to be some kind of thing that namers can't counteract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like that's something they don't have control over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're talking the biggest, baddest namers that we know of, and it's emphasized so many times. It's very clear. He's made this very, very clear with all the mentionings of it. So yeah, that does hold a significance for sure.
The other big thing is that the gray foundation stones, the building's gray foundation stones, and this is a building that Kvothe designed. So we also know that gray foundation stone goes all the way up into his room. Like there's a chimney in his room. And so he talks about like that. He said, His eyes wandered the room restlessly. The fireplace was made of the same black rock as the one downstairs. It stood in the center of the room, a minor feat of engineering of which Coate was rather proud. The bed was small, little more than a cot, and if you were to touch it, you would find the mattress almost non-existent. So he did all this stuff. He engineered the room the way that he has it, where it's seemingly like a gravestone in his room. And the Waystone Inn, I don't think it's called just the Waystone Inn, to be cute. I think it was probably built either around or with a gravestone. And there's copper locks. I think this is significant. I think that there is some purpose to it. It's either that the gravestone is hiding him. It is a place that he can quickly exit out, that they can go through like a portal through the gravestone into the Fae or something along those lines, or that he's, it mutes powers. There's some kind of muting effect to it, or that, it hides him, or that he has it there that he's going to use it as a weapon. Like if the Chandrian showed up, he could use it for his defense, but there's got to be some purpose to the gravestone. It would not be in here if that is not going to play some kind of part in the story. There has to be a reason for that he built this and he designed it. He didn't just buy a bar, he made a bar, and he made it seemingly around a gravestone. That's got to be significant.
Yeah. Yeah, and the fact that gravestones do seem to play a part in like the portal aspect of like the Feyrienial and everything else, and just all the grace of the circle of gravestones that we've talked about. Yeah, there's definitely some significance there. If the gravestone is part of it's basically his chimney. It's a portal. Is Kvothe
Santa Claus? Yeah. Yeah, he definitely is Santa Claus.
This is
the origin story of Santa Claus.
This is the origin story of Santa Claus.
He comes to Earth. He leaves Temerant and comes to Earth as an old man. And his hair goes gray, and so he's not, a soulless ginger anymore. He gets his soul back when he becomes Santa. And goes gray.
I think it's probably canon that Santa Claus was a redhead because his hair is super white. So I think that just makes sense.
Yeah, when he was a bad person. Now he's a good person.
So it's white?
Yeah.
So it goes from red to white? Yeah. That's how you know. That's how you know good ginger.
Well, whatever color. Gingers. As long as it wasn't red anymore. Like any other color is good.
The sign of redheads gone good.
Yeah.
Is
their hair color
white
changes.
Hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah. Well, that's cracked the code there. I mean, I guess it sounds like that's known, but
yeah, that's a known thing in history.
Well, in history.
Yeah.
That's
one of the other, the last little parts I wanted to bring up is the fact that if you think about this big picture on, he seems to be practicing his K-Tan. It seems like more than likely it's him, because the way the thing ends is like a man undressing. So it's likely that Kvothe was the one down in the basement that is in disarray, and now he's coming upstairs. Mm-hmm. So it's likely that was him. Much more likely than any of the other two. And so if he's working in the basement, he's trying to do something. It seems like to get in the thrice locked box. He's working on his K-Tan. When the Skrael come, he goes out there, he fights the Skrael. He's clearly not giving up on being a hero. This is not something he's put aside. He fights the bandits. He tries to light the skin dancer on fire. He tries to do the heroic thing. He's just limited, and he's also conflicted. Clearly,
yeah. I was going to say he's also frustrated. I mean, if he's conflicted, he's frustrated. Those are signs of somebody that gives a shit.
Yeah.
If he just didn't care, and he's just completely, given up, then he doesn't try.
Yeah.
He doesn't get conflicted. He doesn't get frustrated because he just doesn't give a shit.
But the fact that he tries, and he is clearly trying, and he seems to be trying harder as the story goes along to become Kvothe again, to get back to who he is. And it begs you to ask the question, why did he stop fighting? Why did he create this giant mess that he believes he created, and he's not trying to fix it? that he went and faked his own death and went into hiding. Like, that's... Kvothe doesn't seem like the type that would just be like, I'm scared to death, so I'm going to go hide in a fucking corner and hide from danger. That's not Kvothe. He rushes into a fire to save Fella. He risks his life to save other people. Why is he not trying to save other people now? And I think it's got to be that... I don't think it can be just that he did something real fucked up and he can't get over it. He can't come to terms with what he did. It could be that, but I don't think that's it. I think it's much more likely that becoming Kvothe again puts the world in greater danger than it already is. That the risk of becoming Kvothe again is so great that he's not even willing to risk the reward of being the hero and saving, fixing his problem. That risk of becoming Kvothe again might send down a path. And so, like, in the next episode that drops on Monday, the episode 35, that I go into a theory on what might have happened as far as why he changed his name, what's in the thrice locked box, and kind of what happens with him and Denna and everybody. So I don't want to step on that theory, but I do think that there is going to be something that happens that if Kvothe becomes Kvothe again, that he could change that. But by changing that, he would bring destruction on the world. And so I think that there's going to be something that happens. He makes a mistake, something happens, but he has to just live with it. Like, trying to fix the problem would make things worse. And so he has to just accept it, but he can't. So he changes who he is fundamentally. He changes, he puts all the things that make him into the thrice locked box. And he has that all locked away, and that it requires his magical ability to be able to open it. And then he has someone like Ari change his name, and it fundamentally changes him where he doesn't have access to that box anymore. He can't get inside it. He can't become Kvothe again. And that prevents him from doing something reckless, because he knows that if he has the opportunity to do something reckless, he will. So this is his way of, making it impossible for him to do it, which would leave him conflicted, because he would want to fix his problem, but he would be conflicted because he would know that he became Coat for a reason.
Yeah, so I wonder if then to decide to then do something is he's figured some other way to approach it, or if it's just, fuck it, I'm going to try it anyway and hope it doesn't make it worse.
Well, because we've talked about how we think Chronicler might be there to play the role of Scarpy, and so it could be that Chronicler is manipulating him, or utilizing him, similar to Scarpy woke him up as a little kid. Maybe they're doing it for benevolent reasons, and they think that the good thing would be to, hey, look, he made a mistake, but we need him to be Kvothe again. Like, he can't sit on the sidelines for what's to come. He has to be there, and he's just going to have to resist the urge to go do. It could be something like that. So they need him to wake up.
They're doing it for their own reasons.
Yeah, or they could have less than benevolent reasons, and they're willing to ruin this kid and risk a lot because they need him for their own purpose.
Well, it's good, and that's what I was kind of thinking. This is kind of like Tarbeen 2, because he just basically this is what happened is he just basically ignored all his capabilities for that period.
Yeah,
and Scarpy woke him up.
Yeah, and
so this time,
Chronicler seems to be waking him up and bringing him that desire back into him to be through telling his story. So that could be what Chronicler's there for. And I think that the fact that he's practicing his K-10, he's doing whatever he's doing in the basement, I think that lends strong evidence that Chronicler is there for a purpose, that he's purposely trying to do something. The fact that he's tied up with Scarpy too lends a lot of weight to that as well. But I think this further helps it with the fact that whatever he's doing in the basement, it shows that he has a desire. But also too, we have to question why doesn't Bast know what's in the thrice locked box? Like,
that's a good question.
He's he's the fact that he's in the dark shows that it can't just be like, I just put my cloak and, my loot in there. Like the fact that Kvothe has secrets in that box from Bast shows that it's something he doesn't want him to know about. And there's got to be a reason for that. So to me, it makes a lot of sense if he has the things that, would cause him to become Kvothe again, like Bast wants. But he knows that becoming Kvothe again could set the world down a very dangerous path, and he's trying to avoid that. And so Bast trying to counteract that, and Chronicler trying to counteract that could be going against what Kvothe knows is the best choice, or at least he thinks is the best choice, that he's too dangerous to be in the world, and they don't understand that he did this to himself, that he put things in there and prevented himself from getting into that box for a reason. Maybe they don't know exactly what he did and what's at stake.
Yeah, I mean, I could concede a number of those possibilities as being pretty logical. We should just ask Rothfuss.
Yeah. Yeah, and the next question and answer session, I'm just going to ask how the book ends.
No, so for the next question and answer session to be, just tell him to listen to this episode, and he'll know what a lot of our questions are.
Yeah.
Just address those.
Can you listen to like 2 hours of us talking about the book? In fact, could you listen to every episode? Like each one's like 3 hours long, but
that would really help. That would really help, because he's
real beneficial to us, especially if you change the story to make them fit all of our predictions. That would really be great for when that third book comes out and everybody can see that we were right on everything. Would really help us out a lot.
The fact of the matter, like, honestly, I wouldn't want to know how it ends. I don't want these things told to me.
No, I don't want to know like the middle part, just the ending.
But you usually start at the end.
Yeah.
Just read the end first. Read the last chapter first, then do the rest of the book.
Yeah. Yeah, when the third book comes out, because for the audience, the way we'll do it when the third book comes out, we'll read like the chapters that we're going to do for the episode, but we won't go further. So you'll be able to read all the way through, know how it goes, and then you'll be able to see us like speculating on it, guessing, just nailing it, just hitting home runs with every single prediction, like we've already been doing. We'll just continue to hit grand slams. But I think what I will do is I will read the last page first so that I know how it ends. And then I will go back through. That way my predictions are much easier.
I don't remember what it was. I was watching something the other day, and there was a character who said, I always read the last chapter first and then read the book. And this is the most absurd thing
It helps with predicting
heard.
Things.
Yeah. If you want to predict the book throughout the book, or you could, read it the way the author intended, which probably makes a lot more sense.
Why would they put the last chapter in the book if they didn't want you to read it?
Oh my God, yeah. They should release everything as if it's Count of Monte Cristo and just serial releases.
Look, society is not going to dictate what order I read the chapters in.
Okay, yeah, it's up to you, man.
You have to go left to right. Like, no, I can read the book right to left. I can read the sentences right to left.
Good luck.
Bottom to top.
Yeah. Bottom to top.
Yeah.
Good luck. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It'll be a little bit confusing.
Look, those stories, I admit, are not as good. They don't make any sense. But I can do it if I want.
Critiquing the author afterwards as well. Like, man, this didn't really add up to much.
I didn't understand a single thing that was going on. None of it made any sense. I don't recommend your book reading it right to left, bottom to top. Have a long, lengthy critique where you're you're just
can't with good
taking the
conscience
shit out of it.
I can't with good conscience recommend this book to people if they're going to read from the end to beginning, right to left, bottom to top.
Now, if you do it the other way, I don't know how the story goes, so maybe it's better that way. I don't know.
That's the weirdest critique. Like, who is this fucking psychopath?
And they look through, and you got like 150 book reviews and it's all the same thing.
The
Every book review, you read the books backwards, bottom
How's
to
this guy not
top,
getting
right
it?
to left.
He still hasn't tried it. Hasn't found the one.
I'm still looking for that author that nails that format.
The fun, one of the interesting, well, I don't know if it's interesting or funny, but the character, it is funny in the sense that the character that said that was real proud of themselves.
Yeah.
They were like,
yeah.
I have it figured out. I read the end first. Show me if it's worth it. Like, get the fuck out of here.
But yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything I got to say on the Q&A in the prologue. The next episode, you'll get to hear kind of where I think the ending, I lay out a pretty good possibility for the ending. You know, he could go in a million different directions, but I think it'll give you an idea of kind of how I try to think through where he's going to go and how I try to fit everything together. I start with that end and then try to figure out how I would fit the rest of the pieces together. So I kind of give you an ending that I think would make sense as far as the story goes, as far as the narrative of the story goes.
Is it from the end to the beginning?
Yes.
You reformatted?
I speak the words in reverse order in the episode, so yeah, you'll have to play that part in reverse to understand it, but it's worth it.
Yeah, sounds like
Put it on a tape recorder, and then hit rewind. And
I think you need a reel-to-reel.
Yeah,
to make this
maybe
work.
Yeah, I don't know, like some way you can figure it out. But yeah, I think that'll wrap it up. And
well, the only thing I would say is that everybody out there, if they see Patrick Rothfuss, just leave his slushy alone.
Yeah, stop.
Don't spill
it. Kicking.
Stop kicking him his slushy, nuts, and just let him work, man. You know, nothing. But maybe
what do you
go
got
as far
against
as
slushies, man? Slushies are perfectly fine.
Maybe go as far as giving him a slushy. You know.
Yeah.
And no kicks in the nuts.
Be one of the 99. Don't be the one.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be preferable for all of us. You know, it'll be a better book in the end. You'll probably get it sooner.
Turn that frown upside down.
Oh yeah, just like.
Don't worry, be happy.
Just like your ending, my favorite version of the ending of the book that we've posited thus far, which is Kvothe down in the dumps as Coat, telling his story, wraps it up, and Ambrose kicks in the door of the Waystone Inn, throws him his loot.
Yeah, that for sure is happening. The ending I'm talking about is like how he got to the bar.
Got to
that ending.
I got it.
Yeah, that for sure is happening. The fucking rock show, they're going a big rock tour to end the books. That's for sure happening.
Turn that frown upside down.
Yeah.
And just start wailing on the loot.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing. It's going to be really cool to see in the adaptation.
Slam jam poetry. Yeah, it's going to be super, super dope. It's going to be really into it.
But that'll wrap this up, and we'll have this episode. I'll try to get it out as soon as possible, so hopefully it's out before episode 35. I might even try to get it out tomorrow. So, but anyways, we got episode 35 coming on Monday, and hopefully this is out before that.
Just release it right after we stop. So once we hit stop, just release it. Just hit the button.
Yeah. I'll definitely do that.
That's how it works, right? You just hit
I just push a button and it's internet. Internet, be quick. Go.
Oh, are you online? You're one of those people that are online? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But all right, folks. Peace out.
Yep.